I submit my coursework 5 minutes
Right.
It's like something like Christmas, and I was like, oh, I need to do this, and I'm done.
There we go. I got the code for you guys. Last code, right?
Can I just quickly check if my coursework selection works?
I thought I did. If I can have your attention. You can't miss this last session. What I thought I'd do is go to another fast page. You guys should be with me. Well, yeah, do you want to get the actual exam paper? All right. There you go. So we've got a 3-hour exam, 24-hour submission, online. You all got the code right? So what do we need to know? I mean, I've got these exam questions, and of course I'm changing it. I'm making it more, I want you guys to have your own ideas. I don't want you to be copying something off my notes off the internet. So I'm interested in your ideas. Right. So look at question number 1. UAVs in aerospace application. There are currently much interest in employing vision systems in unmanned aerial vehicles in order to undertake different tasks for a number of applications. Yeah? Sorry? Yeah, it's been recorded. Yeah, it's been recorded. By the way, some people have said they've had some trouble seeing the recordings, right? Someone sent me an email. Did you send me an email? Yeah. Perhaps it's best if I just put all the videos onto YouTube, then you won't have a problem, will you? That'd be simplest, wouldn't it? I'll try and do that.
Yeah, there's like 2 or 3 on YouTube that are available, but there's like 4 or 5 that aren't available.
I can put them all on. Right, we'll do. Okay, so here we go then. So let's see. 3 such applications are identified below. In each case, specify 2 examples of specific tasks the vision system needs to achieve. Identify major benefits and challenges associated with the use of machine vision. Airport, runway inspection and clearance following installation. It's pretty obvious, isn't it?
The vision system would need to distinguish foreign objects from the ground.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is that there isn't an exact answer to this. You're looking for stuff on the runway, aren't you? Looking for stuff on the runway. The cameras could be anywhere. The cameras could be a UAV. The cameras could be mounted on the ground and stuff. You want to see that type of debris, get some idea of the size of it, location of it, don't you?
It says it's from UAV.
Sorry, okay, it's on a UAV. So you want to get some idea of the location of it and the size of it, the damage, right? And then what you might also want to do, what else might you want to do in addition to just looking at the stuff on the ground? Yeah, sorry, it's UAV. What stuff on the ground? What else might you want to do in addition to just looking at the debris on the ground? Yeah.
Condition of the surface, like humidity, temperatures.
Sitting water, depending on what kind of storm it was.
Yeah.
Make a note of the location of the stuff on the runway. Like whereabouts it
It's
is.
very important, yeah. And what I was thinking of was kind of related to that. Anything else? I mean, kind of related to that. You know, one thing that you do with UAVs, or you could do with them, with UAVs with cameras on, is to check out, we do a lot of work on farms, right, in agri-tech. It's what about logistics of the farm, right? Looking for what's where in the farm environment. And it's the same here. You've got the debris, you've got people rush out trying to do something about it, or you might want to direct robot vehicles out to it. So it's also logistics of what's going on, vehicles on the runway, and such and such.
Yeah, depending on how advanced the UAVs are, you can probably very rudimentary, but put some room on them and have them fly over the runway and actually clear it as well, kind of thing. Get rid of debris.
Get that, we're going to pay for this.
I don't know. Yes, identifying it and then going.
It goes around the
It's like a Roomba when it flies.
This exam question, I've looked at it. I'm not sure what, because we haven't got a mark scheme, I'm not sure what kind of format to put in. answering. So when I did it, I did the first 2 points that you're talking about, which were, what were they? You've got benefits, challenges, so 2 points in benefits, 2 points in challenges, and then another one on the difficult tasks. Is that an appropriate way to answer this question, or do you want?
Yeah, I mean, it says
that's 6 points. Is that?
Yeah, it says identify the task on it. So that's the first thing to do, isn't it? And then you look for a benefit and the challenge, don't you? And I'm going to give some marks in each case now because I asked for this.
But do you want 6 distinct points, or is it?
I don't go into the breaks down of the exact marks any more than this, but
Right.
just put yourself in my boots. What you'd expect someone to do if they ask that question. It's like, but yeah.
I think the real question is there a word limit to those?
No, there isn't a word limit, right? But if you go write War and Peace, the Brothers Karamazov, take pity on the examiner who's got to try and work out whether you're actually saying the things that might be relevant to this.
Every single time. I'm just copying and pasting that.
Bullet points are great. Bullet points are like I can see that you've got it. I can see it straight away.
And does it have to be typed, or can it be written?
All the instructions are given to you, I think, but it can be either.
Right.
But I think you have to submit a PDF if it's just take photos with your cameras and so on. Now, all right then. What about unmanned aerial delivery? Apparently, 50% of the costs are in the last mile when it comes to online delivery. Yeah. Okay, so you're delivering something safely and reliably, okay. Identification. I think with this, I think this is going to be really big actually. Especially in Somerset where I live, they could deliver okay. In Bristol City, maybe a bit more tricky. But
They do this, the Isle of Wight already. I work
Yeah.
for a company that does it.
no, I come past the airport every day.
It needs to know where the populated regions are, so it can crash in the not in the populated region.
Yeah, okay. All right then.
It needs to identify other flying objects and predict their movement.
Yeah, actually, what else is a challenge with this? What sort of challenge have we got with this? Yeah.
You have something breakable, you don't want the unmanned device to drop the breakable item.
Yeah, it's true.
Someone could come on and steal the package off the drone.
It's true. Amazon seemed pretty good at not smashing
I'm seeing an
stuff.
Amazon drone going on.
Yeah, you're right. Don't smash it. But I was just thinking, what is the problem with drones, right? What is the problem with drones?
The weather. What happens?
The weather, yeah. Someone's trying to get a grant to go to deal with that. Control What is the other problem with drones, yeah?
I was going to say, are we able to give benefits and challenges related to using it with a UAV, or does it specifically have to be benefits and challenges related to the actual machine vision?
Yeah.
So it's quite
the
difficult.
unmanned
Yes, in relation to the UAV,
Okay, so for the unmanned aerial delivery, we could list things like the UAV being stolen and things like that.
Reduced
No
human error.
one.
Yeah, actually, it's not like.
Rotation.
Well, I think you got the idea on that. Let's move on to something close to my heart. UAV reconnaissance in Agriculture.
What kills 3 drones?
No, obviously not or whether it's something that comes along.
Cows from range.
What sort of tasks might you want to do in this?
You can survey fields to see if they're ready for being harvested or flowered or whatever.
Do like all monitor animals. Similar, but
Because we look at a lot of we look at monitoring animals all the time. How's my cow? Which is now being used by Arla worldwide apparently. Not that we're getting the money. How's my cow? Have you ever heard of How's My Cow?
No.
I'm not a farmer, so no, I have not heard of
Where I live, right, in Somerset, I started talking about this.
Can you find out how other people's cows?
Yes. No, right. Yeah, no, you're right.
But wait a minute. Okay. Wait a second. Now, what I'm talking about, How's My Cow, which I always like talking about. How's my cow?
Countdown round cow.
Yeah. Everybody loves it when I talk about How's My Cow. But if you go onto the internet, right, you do a search for herd vision. That is the sort of, they changed the name from how's my cow to herd vision. And this is a system that monitors cows by means of looking directly at them with a 3D camera when they're going into the milking plant, for example, and checks their condition and also checks whether they're laden or not. This isn't quite like that, is it? We're not looking at individual cows at close range here. We're looking at something from a distance with a UAV. But when it comes to cows and animals, when you check their condition and their behaviour is very, very important, isn't it? So I think you get a lot of useful information, this is my view, from analysing them from a distance as well as up close, in terms of their movements, behaviour, social behaviour, speed of movement, or whether they're grouped together, whereabouts they are.
I mean, you could apply it to other beings.
What else could you do with a UAV in terms of UA reconnaissance agri-tech? I think I just mentioned it a minute ago.
Identify weeds.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. I went to a farm in Scotland, right, we're working with. You get the UAV, you're looking down on the field, right? You can see all these textures in the image. Now, the different texture might indicate you've got some kind of weed on your hands, or this, might be something going on with that. So then that tells you where the weeds are generally, right? Then you send in the thing I talked about, grass vision, right? Send that in. They're doing this. Send it into that area, and then it'll start spraying locally to kill the weeds. So it's kind of the problem with it is, doing anything with the UAV is difficult, the camera's all over the place, and the coordinate system, relating that to the one on the ground is a bit of a challenge for these guys and companies and all that. But that's the ultimate idea with it, really. So what else have we got here? So that's a challenge, actually, I just mentioned a minute ago. The benefit, of course, is that you're getting all this information, aren't you? On what's going on, precision agriculture, they call it, really. Information on all the operations on the farm as well, not just the grass and the weeds. What's going on with the farmyard optimization, right? Moving all these things around more efficiently. Okay, going on then to part B of this question, give a brief description of the grass vision system. I've been talking about this, haven't I? How does this thing work? Who wants to explain how this works?
You do, and then you use it.
Isn't this a system where it's like you're going over your field, it's looking down, it's then spotting weeds and then spraying them?
So, he's got it. That's about it. Yeah, actually, what you do is you go along typically with a tractor nowadays, with a long sprayer on the back, maybe about 6 or 8 sprayers, got 6 or 8 cameras. You've only got a couple of seconds between looking at where that camera's looking at and that sprayer being able to operate. Because this is going along, it has to keep going along at a reasonable pace. You only can spray sort of a region of grass at the moment. What you really want to do is spray exactly the weeds, I suppose. You might be able to do that. But the weeds are the same colour as the grass, and the images are very busy. It's difficult for humans to see a little bit of dock. Dock is the worst weed you've got to do with. A little bit of dock in the image. So how do we overcome that?
You look at texture instead.
Textures?
Yeah. The texture of like the weeds is different.
Yeah.
Leaf shapes?
Yeah, we thought that. We thought leaf shapes. We were going to start off with a 3D system years ago when we did this. Some sort of fancy photometric stereo system on the back of a tractor. We realised after a while, keep everything as simple as possible. If you don't need 3D and specialised lighting, then don't go for it. In this case, you can use a normal 2D images. And what I was just thinking of is, this is an example of deep learning, maybe. Convolutional neural networks being very useful. Because what is a very busy image? And you asked the texture, yeah, different textures, you can parameterize textures, but you may not be able to identify, it may be a challenge to identify a dog because it's got a particular structure. There may be other ways of doing it, feature recognition, but the reliable way of doing it seems to be for a complex problem like this is CNNs or deep learning, really. Such systems will be essential in the future. Now, why is that?
Restrictions on pesticide increasing.
Yeah, definitely. You know, at the moment, water companies spend a fortune on cleaning water. The water that comes off the fields, because I know something about this, I'm involved in a water project. They spend hundreds of millions of pounds trying to clean this water because there's so much in the way of pesticides and stuff coming off the field. So you want to reduce all that. In fact, it's going to be illegal to throw this stuff around. Apart from the fact it's going to be cheaper for the farmer if he doesn't throw this weed pesticide all over the place. Anything else?
Increase crop yield.
Yeah, why?
Like revenue in general, you can have increased because there's less weeds.
Killing the weeds without killing your plant.
Yeah.
You get more
Spending less money on retail.
Yeah.
So on some of these dominant will kill other plants, take over.
Yeah, so they will.
like
Yeah.
trippers.
But some plants, you see, when you want to kill weeds, you normally spray a broadleaf weed killer everywhere. That will kill everything that's got a broad leaf. But there's some plants like clover are actually very good. Good for the animals and the soil, like hell of a fertilizer actually. So your point about more productivity is true, I think, because you're not going to kill all that nutrient production that you get from something like clover.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little bit more tricky, you see. Then you've got to differentiate between weeds, dock and clover. Which is not the end of the world, but a bit more complicated than just looking for dock, because you don't want to spray the clover. Anyway, there we go. Okay, question 2. A company wishes to install a vision system at their entrance, so employees will not have to swipe cards to get entry. They have decided to employ a 3D vision system to increase reliability of personal identification. Further, they aim to employ an RGB camera to capture the data. Say why capture a 3D data will make face recognition more reliable.
Texture.
Hmm?
3D camera can do texture.
Textures?
Camera.
Yeah. Do you mean 3D textures?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean, yeah, exactly.
You can't put a photo up to it.
Yeah, you can't fool it with a photo, can't spoof it. Like you come with all these elaborate systems that are kicking around by Intel and other people. Just spoof them with a photo. Yeah, you can get textures, but why can't you spoof it?
Say that again, please.
Why can't you spoof it with a photo?
Because 3D cameras using depth,
Yeah.
infrared as well, so you can recognise. Yeah. Depth.
Yeah, so you get these features in 3D, morphology of the face, which you can't unless you're crazy, go and change, can't you? I mean, easy to change a 2D appearance of the face, put makeup on to make it similar. This thing will see through that, remove it. The illusion of the change in shape of the face due to makeup. Oh, yeah. It makes it more reliable, it seems to me it hasn't taken off this really. I've been talking about people where the face is a biometric. And that's got a good idea, I think, but there's so much confusion and problems about Big Brother, actually, most of it, that people want to know what to do. It's unclear as what's going on, but if you ask me, it's a good idea. Because I know about you, but I have a lot of trouble with passwords and all the time, stuff like that.
What do you mean it hasn't taken off?
Well, it hasn't taken off, has it? I mean,
It's like every iPhone.
yeah, but not being used for anything. I mean,
It's for the face unlock.
to do what?
For the face unlock. It's in every iPhone.
Yeah, but to get a iPhone working, yeah. I mean, it's not employed around the world, generally speaking. And I think, to be totally honest with you, I shouldn't say this is a problem also with AI and deep learning. It's a problem with neural networks. I've got 5,600 contacts on LinkedIn, and I'm members of all these groups, and there's all sorts of talk all the time about what you can do with deep learning, but I think it's got to go beyond playing games and deep fakes. That's my view. It's not employed as widely as you might expect. And that is a good question about why it's not, actually. And I'm not going to ask you about this in the exam.
They've got the airports now.
Yeah, for your passport.
Which ones?
I don't know. I haven't.
Now, those that you have in Bristol Airport,
Manchester.
the Bristol Airport have got some systems, right, but these, as far as I know, are 2D systems. There was a famous case of a couple who got their passports mixed up and the system did. It still got through the system. It's
Some twins have done it.
yeah. They don't. There is some move towards 3D going on in certain areas.
I feel like it's being used in like really secure areas, like airport security,
A bit.
far earlier than it's used on things like loyalty cards.
Yeah. You see what is going on, I think, with traditional face recognition, it's about 95% reliable. It falls down when the lighting changes. You'd be surprised how much of a problem a change in lighting is. A change in light is a real problem. But you can, by means of these techniques, look at the morphology, especially texture, as mentioned there, 3D texture, you can take it up towards 100%. So then you can open up all these fairly high security applications, like buying stuff in shops, banks, all sorts of security applications, right? And I think it could exponentially increase. This hasn't happened. It's still a bit of a novelty. So at the moment, it's things like getting into the gym, and maybe Tesco are using it a bit, just looking for certain people that don't work in the shop. But it isn't exactly. I think it was like on the London Underground, which just imagine, because we did a project on that, the London Underground. What a break that would be, wouldn't it? Not having to mess around with those gates, and messing around with the ticket and all the rest of it. And the technology's there, but for various reasons to do with business and politics, I think, it isn't actually happening. I think so, yeah. It isn't happening much. Because what's his name, that bloke who drove, oh, by the way, that book I wrote, okay, I put it on, I'm put today free, if you're interested, onto Amazon, because it's got some information on this. It's got some information on prospects of AI, convolutional neural networks, what you can do with recognition. But the guy in there, I think I quoted him, the guy who invented deep learning, really, Geoffrey Hinton, a British guy who works in Canada now. He had got a student called Alex. You heard of this? Alex, and he gave him a project to do, and this guy, this was about 2012, he came up with this thing called AlexNet, which is really the first really useful convolutional neural network for face recognition. There's an ImageNet competition where there's 1 million images on the internet, and you've got to recognize faces. And this system worked about 20% better than anything else it had up to then. So there was a big breakthrough in this in about 2012. And what I'm saying is, I expected the applications, or at least the serious applications, the demonstration of the applications, to be much more than they are now, really, 10 years later. There's a system called, I'm not going to ask about this in the exam, but Watson, IBM Watson, I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a computer facility. IBM spent billions of dollars on, a few years ago, because it was very good at Jeopardy. It beat all the experts in Jeopardy that was shown in the States. It didn't get anywhere, really. It didn't get anything like as far as IBM expected. And the question about why it didn't, in my view, has got to do with data. It's probably a bit too involved to go into here, but it's interesting. Why couldn't it work out cancers from various symptoms as well as it could work out answers to questions on Jeopardy? It's a bit of a subject. Sorry, I got a digression there going on. Where do we get to? Right. Now, this is not actually this Connect thing. I'm probably not going to ask you to swallow that, because I don't want you to just go on the internet and find out. Does anybody happen to know what it connects? Version 1, 2?
I don't know version 1 and 2.
What about version 3 then?
No. No, the Azure.
The Azure is a version 3.
Version 3.
So what are you guys after, right? Doing all your hard work in the lab, right? What can you tell me about the Azure?
Uses time of flight to
Yeah.
Andy doesn't think it's very good.
Who doesn't? Right.
unless you can like download the dot map as well, you can't really do much with the image you get.
Yeah, you've got to get it. It's designed for people downloading it in terms of this file.
Yeah.
Anyway, the thing is, yeah. What sensors has it got in it, by the way? Until we happen to know.
It has the 1 megapixel depth camera, the 12 megapixel color gradient.
That's a pretty good.
It has 6 different operating modes.
It's got, do you know it's accelerometer built into it? I thought.
Is that so?
Everyone else also goes to the same
Frustrated.
That is what I was thinking actually. I was thinking just that.
I haven't looked at those sensors.
You've got it's very good to detect through the window mode. Right, recommend a specific camera, lighting and operational configuration that could be used for this application. Oh, God. Explain why and how a particular camera position orientation operation will provide the needed data. You see, this is where I like asking these questions where you can have an idea. And I'm not going to Christ, that's wrong. I'm unlikely to say, can't you get it completely wrong. I'm always assuming that that's another idea. Maybe you got it in the trouble. What could we answer to this be? What could we do here?
You have elevated side lighting.
You want some side lighting?
Elevated side lighting.
Oh yeah, why not? Yeah, go for it, yeah. And,
Right.
you know, so these are techniques we talked about, aren't they? Binocular stereo, photometric stereo, you remember all this stuff. Triangulation. I bought a system, did I tell you about the 3D system I bought from this company in Atlanta? And it will take a very good image and 3D recover the data in about 2 milliseconds. And it works in terms of projecting, right? It's got a couple of cameras, it's got a set of cameras, projecting these images of patterns onto the face, right? No, it's like 1 millisecond or something. So it all happening quickly, hardly notice it. You can do it in infrared if you want, I suppose. So why does it do that? Why does it use that pattern? So if they have to imagine why it uses that pattern. Why does it project that pattern to the face?
It can detect distortions in like shapes, right?
Yeah.
It can, yeah. So it can
Two
see
cameras.
if they're further apart, the dots are further apart. It knows that that object's further away.
Yeah, that's it basically, I suppose. Yeah.
Wouldn't you take advantage of parallel, what's it called?
Parallax.
Parallax, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're saying here.
Oh.
Parallax. You've got two cameras, so you've got really triangulation, stereo vision, binocular stereo, it's all the same thing, right? You've got two cameras. You've got to work out what's the chief problem in binocular stereo.
Matching the images.
Yeah, which is also known as the correspondence problem. So you've got to work out, for a given point of reality, where it appears in the two images, which doesn't seem difficult. It does seem, you might think that's okay, and sometimes it is. If you're looking at a box, you can see the four corners, that's okay. But if you're looking at something more complicated, like a face or something, it may be a challenge to solve this correspondence problem. So this projection is done to help you eliminate the correspondence problem. You can look at the patterns in the patterns been projected and identify the same pattern point and triangulate more accurately. As a consequence, right, it doesn't give you tremendously high resolution of the 3D. You wouldn't be able to get the 3D texture we were talking about a minute ago, because it only relies on what the texture of the pattern is. You can't really look any higher than that. So that's an advantage of photometric stereo. When we talked about photometric stereo, we use a lot of that. That can recover textures of very high resolution, only really limited by the resolution of the camera. Different technique. Okay, we can talk more about 3D in a minute.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Part 3. Would it be worth presenting a case study and then talking around that, how you would set up a...
Yeah, certainly. Your idea, you mean?
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. You see, I put in here, explain how, why and how applicable. So this is where I want your idea.
Yeah.
How to think that. I said include a diagram, so you'd lose a mark if you didn't put a diagram in straight away, wouldn't you? So it says explain how and why. So what I want you to do a sketch.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a brilliant AutoCAD drawing, right? It could just be your sketch. I'm interested in your ideas. I'm not going to say, oh, that's a bit scruffy, I'm liking that. Well, that doesn't look brilliant. I'm going to be interested in what your idea is. That's why I don't come up. That's why I don't have any model answers for these questions, because I don't issue
So
model
for
answers.
instance, for a particular scenario, I would use this setup for X, Y, Z reason.
Yeah.
So whilst it's partly about recommending a camera capture, it's partly about the quality of the use case and explaining why you
Well, I want to get your ideas. I want these tremendous that you thought about, rather than just come someone come off the internet. On the other hand, if you do put specifics in about cameras, that's good. It shows you've read around a bit of research about cameras and lights that might be suitable. So I'll give you a mark for that straight away. But I'm interested in your ideas, as specific as possible, about how you do something like this. And this goes for all the questions of this type. And there's this bit on the end here about metal powders. Yeah, pretty straightforward. What's the operation here?
Thresholding.
I wouldn't ask this nowadays. I don't think it's just been image. Some artifacts. How could you get rid of these holes in these? These are not really. You don't want these holes. You should try to work out the morphology of these particles. Right?
Let's use the fill-in holes feature.
Sorry.
The fill-in holes thing.
But that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say. Okay.
Vision programs.
I'm not going to say Jesus Christ. He's mentioned that. I'm going to give you a mark for that. You know. But there is another way you could do it, which would be less to do with LabVIEW specifically. Do you remember the technique?
Closing.
Yeah, closing, wasn't it? Yeah, dilution followed by an erosion, basically, yeah. Which will get rid of these little holes for you. Because how do you... Okay, yeah. Now, object irregularity. Now, who remembers that?
How far it is from a perfect circle.
Yeah. How do you work that out?
The Jacob Rees-Mogg irregularity model. I don't know. There's like a guy's name and then irregularity.
I don't know, Mogg might have come up with this, I'm not
No,
sure.
it's
But
not.
I think it might be before he came into politics. Someone bought me a book by Mogg, actually. The Victorians, I know. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, so what is the irregularity in terms of how you work it out?
It's like a difference between squares, the length and the width. I can't remember exactly, but
Isn't it the perimeter square over the 4 pi times the area?
it's
So for a circle it's 1. Something like that. Look it up anyway. What is the advantage of that? Now, of course, if you had those holes, that would probably register as part of the perimeter or something. That would cause an error straight away. So that's what you have to get rid of. But now, okay, how it works, we just said how it works, I suppose. It just works out the perimeter. That's how it works. What's the advantage of it?
It can help you find circular objects in your image.
Circular objects.
Yeah.
Non-circular.
Or like if you're looking for a specific shape,
Yeah.
with a specific level of irregularity, you can find it more easily
You're right that you could, yeah.
by categorising it with a.
Yeah, you're right, I think, that you could find circles with it, because let's face it, the only thing that would have the value of 1 would be a circle, wouldn't it? But in relation to that, what was the question I asked? What you can do with it?
The advantages.
Yeah. Well, what's the advantage, apart from the fact you can find a circle with it? What's the advantage of it?
Do some statistical analysis of its.
Yeah, but you can do that with a lot of, this is a shape, pattern, this is a pattern recognition technique. This is something for analysing shape of an object, a block in an image.
So it would work regardless of the orientation.
Right, that's it. We'll work it, and regardless of the orientation, which is pretty important actually, which doesn't hurt for, say, template actually, does it? What else? There's one more advantage.
You can determine the irregularity of the entire collection of particles or objects.
Well, you might look at one at a time to keep it easy for yourself. You know, you could look at what you want to.
Is there a position?
Yeah, kind of. All I was thinking is that it doesn't matter what scale the object is, the size of it in the image, because that might be dependent on the magnification you happen to be using, might change magnification. So if you've got a magnification technique, you want it to be robust in the presence of rotation and scaling, really. What disadvantages has it got?
Providing you quite limited information.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you're gonna have to do more afterwards to like get anything of value, really.
Yeah, maybe. You'd be surprised though. When it comes to these particles, I did a PhD in looking at this. The irregularity, this is called a stereological method. You're looking with a 2D image, trying to work out something with 3D. It's a bit complicated, but you can work out 2D irregularity fairly accurately, and there is a relationship between that powder, how dense it is when you pour it into a dye, right, and what the irregularity of the particles is. The more irregular they are, the less dense it is. For manufacturing, this is quite important sometimes, you know, in manufacturing automotive parts. But what did we get back to? Well, yeah, that's the idea of the shape. I was thinking, yeah, the information is incomplete, really, I suppose. And that's because it doesn't give you the shape in a lot of detail, does it? It just tells you that this thing's got a certain irregularity. A spider might have the same irregularity as a long line, but it's completely different. So it doesn't give that much spatial or graphical information. But yeah, it might be a useful starting point, like you're saying, I suppose. Okay, move on to question 3. A company that manufactures components that have a complicated 3D shape is considering employing machine vision to inspect components as move on conveyor belt. They wish to measure the morphologies of the parts to check that they are near to the specified target values. They are considering either using laser triangulation or binocular stereo for this application. Discuss the possible advantages and disadvantages of laser triangulation and binocular stereo for this application. Say which you would recommend the company should employ. A minute ago, we talked about the correspondence problem as being a possible issue with binocular stereo, didn't we? What advantages is binocular stereo?
You could
It's
potentially.
cheaper than laser triangulation, isn't it?
Why is that? Yeah,
Because
this
you only need the 2 cameras, whereas laser triangulation you need all the settings.
cheaper and simpler, isn't it?
You mean we have more users and things cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
They do. They cost, last time I bought a laser was like £1,000, and that was 1,500 quid or something.
Just in regards to the wording of that question, you only have to do the advantages and disadvantages for one of them, correct?
Or binocular stereo.
I would have done this.
I think with both, that's what I'm looking
Yeah,
at.
I mean, just the wording of that
Yeah.
kind of reads that you only need to do one, but
Okay.
they will end up doing one of them in the exam and getting that done.
Well, then it contradicts.
Yeah,
It's
so
us
it's
in the
gonna be
I would admit, I would probably.
Yeah, it means both. Probably the reason I did.
Summarise.
It means they got. It's asking about both really, because yeah. I didn't put and in case you thought I meant combining them or something, but it's both. What is the disadvantage? What's the advantage of binocular stereo? Oh, okay, we've got one advantage. It's cheaper than laser triangulation. It's like a comparison, I suppose, isn't it? Cheaper than laser triangulation because you won't have to mess around with the laser. What other advantages has binocular stereo got? Yeah.
Because it doesn't have lasers, it's not going to damage your eyes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It can be anything really. These answers, it doesn't have to be any specific. Yeah, that's true. True. Might have to stick it inside a box or something. But what other advantage has it got? Laser triangulation. Do you remember laser triangulation? Whereas you've got this laser shining down and a camera looking. Actually, the laser shining at an angle, probably. The camera looking down. And you're looking at distortions in the line to work out. So things trundling along, and the line's moving all along the top, and you get the whole.
Is it sensitive to other lighting conditions?
Which one?
The laser triangulation.
No, you'd be less sensitive than binocular stereo, really, because you've got the laser line, which is very monochromatic, a laser. So you could have a narrow bandpass filter on the camera, and you're just looking for the laser and nothing else. So laser triangulation offers you some robustness in the presence of background light changes. That could be an advantage of it.
Is it to do with like things that would be like occluded from the laser? Like,
Yeah, that is a
like
point.
an
That is a
overhang or
point.
something
That
like
is a point, right? You've got to have the laser and the camera separated to get some decent accuracy, and then you get occlusions because it maybe the laser can hit things that the camera can't see or whatever. But on the other hand, that's also true of binocular stereo because unless you have those cameras separated, you won't get a decent accuracy anyway because you need that triangulation technique. But there's one fairly obvious thing about binocular stereo, which is kind of an advantage compared to laser triangulation. It's simpler, that's one thing. But all I was thinking of is it's a one-shot technique. Okay, so you take those two images simultaneously, so you can use it for things moving around in the sky, flying around, because it's just instant technique. With laser triangulation, you've got this thing trundling along the conveyor. It might be bouncing around a bit, or there might be some light changes as it goes, or whatever. So it's bouncing around a bit, so that will cause errors. And a friend of mine, he's a professor in, good great guy, in Spain, was doing a lot of research on looking at rolled steel coming along in a steel mill. And he said, okay, what's this rolled steel? We've done a lot of research on it. He's got lots of errors due to the steel bouncing around. He said, what am I going to do with the steel bouncing around? What about these errors? And I said to him, has anybody got an idea of how he might be able to deal with that?
Don't really understand the problem.
Well, you've got this steel, right? Coming down, it's coming down a conveyor belt, right? In a rolling mill. The steel is coming along, hot steel. It could be an error, it could have been performing error, it could have a bump on it, or it could just be bouncing on the conveyor, make it look like an error.
I'm sure it's a question of making a better conveyor belt that's more stable.
Yeah, but these things like £20 million, this is all like the size of this room and it's red hot steel. And
slow it down a bit.
Slow it down.
Yeah, calm it, mate.
Have the move of the conveyor belt, the camera. Yeah, but this is even simpler than anything like that.
Mount the cameras to the conveyor belt. So if it bounces, it bounces too.
Yeah. I never know, it might work. But all I was thinking of is, because the cameras are probably on the ceiling or something, all I was thinking of is have two laser lines in the field of view. So the thing is moving along in front of these two laser lines. So if it's a bump on the actual steel, if it's a defect on the steel, it will appear in the two laser lines. If it's just due to the thing trundling on the conveyor, it will only appear in one of them. And he put this into a paper and put my name on, actually. I was quite chuffed with that. But yeah, we get a good guy. You know, he's in the lab for 6 months.
Do you not, with the laser triangulation, it's not problems with reflections?
Yeah.
But with the rolled steel, is that
What
like,
about second laser?
matte enough to...
Yeah, you'd be surprised actually. You're right. When the light, you've got the laser shining down, the camera on angle. So any specular reflection, like mirror type reflection, would normally come off like a reflection of a mirror. So and that's where it may do, but enough of it will come off in a sort of, according to Lambert's law, in every direction to actually make this work. You'd be surprised what you can do. We had a project, I had a PhD guy, and he was looking at Pilkington's group before, and he was looking at glass, and he works with glass. Even though you'd think a lot of it's coming off specular, some of it comes off in every direction, even off glass. So that was, the question is but it still works. And anything else you can think of? I'm not going to, I'll give you marks, I think, it's a reasonable thing. Okie dokie. So we've got this thing, I think you'll find in the lecture notes, so I won't necessarily go through all here. It's just working out the geometries of the equation for finding range with this. It's in the lecture notes, okay, and then you work out the range. In machine vision, pattern recognition is used to model image data in order to detect the presence of pattern features. Okay, identify two techniques for pattern recognition other than irregularity in neural networks. In each case, explain how it's achieved. Okay, what else then? How can you do pattern recognition in vision? What techniques are kicking around? In the lecture notes.
That method which you described to separate the 2D data from the 3D data.
Photometric stereo?
Yes.
You see, the thing is about this, right, when it comes to this example, the way to get a good mark versus just about passing and stuff like that, is to be very specific and give me exactly what I'm asking for, okay? So, I'm asking here for about pattern recognition, okay? What you're talking about there is a data recovery technique for 3D data. So, like binocular stereo, laser triangulation, photometric stereo, it's a means of recovering data. But once you've got the data, then you've got to analyse it. That's where the pattern recognition comes in. So people often do that, put that in there. Well, I can't give that good a mark because it's not really the answer. Yeah, but how could you, I mean, do you remember I went through a couple of things on pattern recognition? There's lots you could do, I'm not saying it's just this. But I was thinking of stuff like polar signature. Polar signature, where you find the centroid, centre of the object block, and then you start drawing lines but at different angles all around the centroid, and looking for the perimeter distance. And then you plot that against the angle. And do you know what I'm saying? You're okay with that? What advantage might that offer?
Help you determine the orientation of an object.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you know what the object should look like,
Yeah.
then it will help you identify them.
Yeah. The object has a certain shape, and that shape will be represented in the line that you've plotted, won't it? That's giving you the shape information, but the position that could slide along the x-axis, and the position of that slide, which is the orientation.
Yeah.
So it would learn to detect orientation. But I was thinking it's giving that robustness in relation to rotation, because all it's doing is slide that along. You've still got that same pattern there.
What was that called?
Polar signature.
Okay.
There's a book in the library, he goes on about this. It's fairly well-known stuff. It's well-known stuff. This. What are the techniques? What are the techniques that you guys have been using in the tutorials? Yeah, template matching. What's the possible problem with it? Slow?
So if there's any minor defect in it, it won't pick it up.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I was just thinking rotation might be an issue. If it rotates a bit, then you suddenly. That's a bit of a problem because you're looking for the thing at certain orientation.
You can set it up.
Right, okay. Okay. Now that kind of stuff. Now going on to question 4, the one you've been waiting for, I suppose. In computer vision, neural networks have been common technique for pattern recognition. What is a neural network? Does anybody want to vouchsafe an answer to that?
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, here we are. In computer vision, neural networks have been a common technique for pattern recognition. Briefly explain what a neural network is and how it functions. To be honest with you, that's less like to advance this question now, but it's too straightforward.
Well, it's straightforward.
Go on, just a little freebie.
It's all been about a year ago put into right until. I have no power. What is a neural network, just out of interest?
It's a collection of like nodes which all have a weighting of what they're looking for, and it outputs it, and the weighting of the nodes then makes a decision, kind of. Yeah,
don't big it up too much. It's not actually artificial intelligence. It's not actually, what do they call it? The new artificial intelligence. It's just a modelling technique, really. Statistical modelling technique, which will allow you to recognise patterns, because the pattern depends on how you format the data and put it into the network. It has inputs and outputs. Like you say, it's got connected together. You've got these neurons. They're connected together. The connection has got a weight associated with it. It's just a multiplier. these are randomly assigned to start with. When you start training it, it starts converging, and these values start converging to certain values which model the data you give it, in short. So the model is in the network of weights. Okay. You can start, if you had a question like this, you could start talking about backpropagation being the way to train it. These things were dreamt up by this bloke Rosenblatt, I go all about in the book, in 1950. But it wasn't really a breakthrough until 1980, I think it was, when some guy had the idea of using backpropagation. Do you remember that? Yeah. How does backpropagation work?
I don't know how else I remember that.
Oh, right. Well, it's okay. Just in a nutshell, right? You split the data into two sets: the training set and the test set. Why do you do that?
So when you're using it, it's not using already tested data, and it doesn't learn just to.
Otherwise, it learns to be too specific.
Yeah, it'd be too much like the error, modeling error in the training. So you want to make sure it generalizes. That's why you have a test data to test it with. But you take the training data, right? You put the inputs in, you put them through the network, you get some outputs. You compare the outputs with the outputs in the training data, you get an error. Then you this is automatically done in the computer. You modify the weights so as to minimize the error. And you go backwards, that's why it's called backpropagation. Do that backwards through all the weights. Once you've done that, that's one epoch. You keep doing that. Computers are very good at repeating that kind of thing. And the error comes down, and you end up with a trained network. Then you test it with your test data. And you plot your outputs in your test data versus your outputs from the trained network. And if everything was hunky-dory, that'd be a perfectly straight line. In reality, there'd be a bit of error. But you could do some regression on it to see how well your network's performing. Okay. Today, convolutional neural networks are often employed in machine vision research. Provide a brief explanation of the structure and function of CNN. Give a critical appraisal what you consider to be the advantages and benefits associated with using CNN machine vision. So what's the structure of this thing? Does anybody remember? What do you have near the front of the convolutional neural network?
You've got your input, and then it goes up to load of nodes, and it goes to one output, isn't it?
Yeah, but how does it work? I mean, what does it do in the first layer of the network?
You have a kernel.
Yeah, you have a kernel, right? Because, not surprisingly, being called a convolutional neural network, you've got convolution filtering. Convolution and filtering are the same thing. The kernel is a filter kernel.
It's divergent.
Sorry?
Divergent.
Sorry.
What it does, it starts off randomly assigning the values in the kernel, right? But during the training operation, these values will again converge. And then you go through a number of convolutional layers to developing these data maps. It's a bit complicated, okay, but it does work remarkably well. And then you have to reduce the data because you've got vast amounts of data doing that. So you have these pooling layers to reduce the data. And then at the end, you have fully connected layers, right, which are just like the layers you get in a normal neural network. But what are these fully connected layers for? They, what did you say?
Backpropagation?
No, they're for classification, right? Because what you've got to do, this idea of this thing is it's identifying. That's a dog, that's a cat. So you've got to classify things into different classes, really. And that's what you get with this. Now, I don't worry too much about the mechanics of how it works. I would like to ask you a lot of detail about that. But have a read around and look at what I say in the lectures about what the advantages and disadvantages are of this approach, what people think of it. Okay? I'd be interested in their views on that. So it says here, what are the advantages? Okay, what's the advantage? Why do you want to mess around with this at all? What's the point of this? This is very complicated in terms of the way it works. It's interesting, right? It may sound horrendous when I talk about it, but you don't necessarily need to know exactly how it works to use it. You can be a user of it if you've got enough data and get good results without necessarily understanding the details of the filtering that goes on. Which you know it basically. But what's the advantage of it?
It's self-teaching, and it'll become more accurate over time.
Yeah,
because
good
you're not
point.
getting it too specific.
It determines the features of interest automatically. Normally, you've got to try and work out what the feature is before you start doing something like a text template matching. But this thing will determine what features are automatically. So there's a hell of a lot less work for you because you don't have to worry about doing that. And it's likely to be more accurate because all the feature information is coming from the actual data. It's data-driven. So that's a big plus. Anything else? was talking about AlexNet a minute ago. Well, it's simply that it works very well. You know, you've got your 10, 20% better than any other technique at the time. It works remarkably well, detecting weeds and grass. Most systems will be able to do. You can do things with it you couldn't do with classical machine vision that we've been focused on in the tutorials and the lectures, because it's more powerful. It's more like human ability to do things. Okay. Convolutional neural networks have required large amounts of training data. However, in recent years, techniques have emerged to reduce the amount of data. Now, can you guys think of, I mentioned a couple of these techniques?
Yeah, you can like transform images, so like rotate the object or shrink it.
Yeah, you get a load of images, you start flipping them, rotating, scaling them. You wouldn't think that would make any difference, would you? But you add them to the training data set and it improves the performance. And that's called data augmentation. An important technique. Data augmentation. Anything else? Yeah, what's that called? Well, you've got the right idea. You take the image database, right? You train your network to some extent, and then it's called, you've got pre-trained it. Then you take your small amount of data for your actual application, right? And then you start continuing the training with that. And that's cool, and that actually works. You wouldn't think that would work, but it does work. So that's called transfer learning. And it may not work quite as well as doing it from scratch, but it's a hell of a lot less work than this data.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, well, how it works.
Yeah.
You take a network, which is you want to train. You should give it data from an ImageNet, a big data, for example, a big database on the internet where there's millions of images, and then they're categorized, these images, so you can train with that. And you do a certain amount of training like that, okay? And then you stop and you take your data set, which is probably relatively limited, which is what you've got available, weeds and grass or whatever, and you start continuing the training. And you carry on like that as much as you can. And once you've done that, you've got training by means of transfer learning, it's called. You use a pre-trained network. Nowadays it's all available on the internet, all this stuff. Yeah, Andrew? No. Oh. So you've got data augmentation and transfer learning, the two most important, I think, on that one. Oh, this one about the, where do you want to automate, explain why it's considered desirable to automate existing manually undertaking visual tasks. Support discussion with a range of different examples. Now, this is stuff you'd be able to think of, really. What are you guys thinking of here?
Reduces error.
Yeah?
It's cheaper.
Can be, because it can work 24 hours. Don't have to worry about evenings and weekends. What else?
Can be safer.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got demanding applications, nuclear power station, whatever, military stuff, you can do it automatically using vision guidance. Yeah.
Subjective?
Yeah, that's important, yeah.
We're not going to lose marks for basically repeating question 1 here, because a lot of question 1, the advantages and disadvantages of UAVs is...
well, don't worry about it, because this is I'm not going to give you this paper. So.
Yeah, but no, if we repeat ourselves...
Well, try to avoid repeating yourself, Put yourself in my boots, it's better if you don't, isn't it? But anyway. So all that kind of stuff, isn't it, really? I try to make the paper so you don't have to repeat yourself, you never know. So this is it. This is where your automation comes in, isn't it, really? I think the one about subjectivity is very important. If you look at, remember this thing I talked about, the skin analyzer, the lesions? People do go and see doctors, even specialists, right? In the NHS, they go and see specialists. The specialists don't recognise dangerous lesions, send them over, people die. Every task that's undertaken, if it's undertaken manually, is done slightly differently. So though you may have some accuracy, you probably don't have repeatability. But repeatability is very important for many applications to get good repeatability. So get rid of that subjectivity and replacing it with some objective measures and approaches to doing things is a big plus if you can do it. Okay, on about the air-to-air refueling. Okay. Yeah. I went to I went to a conference once, and the USAF were presenting, and they were talking about robotic air traffic. But what the MOD were focused on when I was doing this some years ago was looking at damage on air traffic refueling hose. Now, okay, so identifying, looking at these researchers. I had a guy doing this. Okay. Yeah, you know, this guy has found out that photometric stereo could provide additional useful benefits. Identify such a benefit, explain exactly how photometric stereo can be used. To provide the benefit when analysing the area hard. Use diagram to help with the explanations. Identify any problems that you might expect to encounter, suggest possible solutions. It's very important to ensure that your discussion relates to the hose application. Okay, I do keep emphasising this. Well, if I'm asking you about the hose, you know, talk about the hose. That's all. I mean, so photometric stereo. Who can just suggest what that is? Do you remember anything about it?
It's when you've got different lights positioned around it with different colours, or it could just be 3 photos taken with a light on in different positions. You compare them.
That's exactly it.
Combine.
How do you combine them?
By overlaying them.
How?
Do a surface normal.
Yeah, but how do you've got generated surface normals, haven't you? How do you do it? Because that is all right. I think you said that was right. But there's another part to it. You need to combine that. You have at least three lights in known locations. You only have one camera, usually looking from above, and you one light on at a time. You get 3 images. Then you combine these images using what?
Photometric stereo.
No, that is not going to get you a mark, is it? Because I'm asking you. Now, it's Schopenhauer who said that the more you struggle to think of something, the more likely you are to remember it. I should spend another couple of 20 minutes waiting for you to answer this. But what I was thinking of is Lambert's law. Lambert's law assumes, okay, that the light is reflected in all directions, right? It's a perfectly matte surface, diffuse reflection going on. And then in that situation, the apparent intensity at that point will be proportional to the cosine of the angle between the surface normal vector and the lighting vector. Do you remember that? You know, you can imagine, if I had a light up here somewhere and I was looking down, that angle would be near 0, wouldn't it? Cosine 0 is 1, so that'd be the brightest image in that situation. As it goes down, it's the problem. So, yeah, that works remarkably well, actually. That works remarkably well. You know, Lambert's law, very robust. So you could talk about this, you understand it. Identify such a problem. How would these techniques help them solve the problem?
Identify how deep the damage is.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
You can't tell if that's just a surface scratch or
Is that, how big is that image? What are
a hose.
The pose is something like this.
Oh, right.
The thing is, yeah, you remember what's a characteristic of photometric stereo? What's it good at doing? 3D, yeah. You know, you separate 2D and 3D data very easily and reliably with photometric stereo. 2D data is like a normal photo. It's called the albedo. It's the reflectivity of the surface. Right? 3D is, remember I talked about the dense array of surface normals? That's a bump map. Each position where you normally have a pixel, you've got a vector. For a flat piece of paper, all the vectors will be facing up. If you've got some feature like this, the vectors start changing direction because you've got this 3D feature. Right? So you start analysing this bump map to work out that this is a 3D defect. This is not just someone slapping some paint on there. This is, you know, you can differentiate between marks and indentations very easily and reliably. You could do this with other 3D techniques as well, I suppose, but photometric stereo is particularly good at doing that. Okay, diagrams in there. Identify any problems you might expect to encounter and suggest possible solutions.
So you say you can generate a bump map from the photometrics. How do you do that?
Well, it's best to look at the lecture I gave on it. It's all the details there. But basically, right, you set 3 lights, right, one on at a time, using Lambert's law. That gives you 3 equations. in a nutshell, right? And then you've got three equations, you've got three unknowns. What are the unknowns? At each point. What are the unknowns? Yeah?
Position vector.
It's the orientation of the surface normal vector at that point, which is P and Q, the angle, rotation with X and Y, Z directions. What's the other variable?
Albedo.
The albedo, good, the albedo. So three variables, three equations, you can solve it to get the orientation at each point and the albedo at each point. You do that at each point in the image, you end up with your albedo image and your bump map. That's it.
Because I want to ask, like, do I need to buy
Oh, good.
Should I do one?
Any other questions about this? So,
It is on the timetable, so. Yeah, but I've already done that. But my concern is just going to go, oh, actually, you can't use this specific function.
you know,
I'm going to cry.
there's loads you could do on problems and solutions. There's always some good marks to be got from problems and solutions. Background light, there's a problem. Background light's always a problem, Candy. How might you overcome background light? Which one? Yeah, put it in a box.
George,
Put it in a box.
what did you do in the end? Did you get through it?
You have to run the simple answers.
I'm
okay, no problem.
systems and allowing through.
Okay.
Bro, I literally made it presentable.
We'll have to wrap it up there. All the best for the exam and the assignment.
In my report, I basically just write this is visual, vision